Hey guys, Connor with Diet Doc Waterloo. I'm just going to shoot a short video today on how to squat when you have dysfunctional knees, injured knees, crunchy knees, well-worn knees, anything like that. A lot of people tend to avoid squatting movements if the squatting movement hurts their knees, obviously. They avoid it in training for sure. They avoid strengthening that movement pattern. It's generally cautioned you should avoid squats when you're rehabbing your knees to a degree. I mean, at some point you're going to want to work them back in. But a lot of people get afraid of that movement without justification. It's a pretty safe movement to continue squatting with a lot of different knee injuries, and we'll get into specifics there without knowing what I'm working with. But if you modify the squat a little bit, it can take a lot of the strain off the knee that's going to cause the majority of the issues. So to demonstrate, when most people squat, they're going to have a medium to wider stance, and as they squat, the knees are going to move forward like so. And when you get to the bottom position, my knees are over top of my toes or approaching the front of my foot, and there's a ton of shear strain on the knee. That anterior displacement puts a lot of stress on the patellar tendon, makes it more of a quad dominant movement. In general, it's just going to degrade the knees really quickly, especially if you have a knee issue. If I do a slightly wider stance, and I make sure that my knees stay put the entire movement of my hips move back, so instead of initiating there, I initiate by pushing my hips back and back up. My knees are moving forward maybe half an inch or an inch each time in that bottom position. I have a pretty vertical tibia, as you can see here, which means that most of the weight of this movement is being put onto my glutes, onto my hamstrings, onto my low back a little bit, but very little shear stress is being put on the knee joint itself. That's important for a few reasons. Generally speaking, people are going to have trouble activating the glutes if you spend any time sitting. It's probably a consideration that you need to look at. A wider stance squat with the knees staying over top of the ankles rather than over top of the toes is probably going to lead to better glute activation, so that's an important consideration. A lot of people lose hip mobility, and they make up for it by drawing on the knees for mobility too much. And that's what you see with a lot of people when they bend down. If you're bending down to pick something up off the ground, the knees come forward like so, instead of actually squatting to get something or bending forward at the hips. The knees go forward and you just put all the strain on the patellar tendon. Again, not a great long-term strategy. Eventually you're going to be doing some physio or some therapy or something to correct like a patellar tendonitis or bursitis or something like that. So to avoid that, you can just draw more on your hip mobility, load your hips more, draw on the strength of the strongest muscle in the body, the glute max, and practice the movement, because you shouldn't be able to squat deep with a vertical tibia unless you practice that. And if you get good at that movement, then you can apply it to almost anything. You can use that kind of movement pattern going up and down stairs a bit more. You can use that to sit down in chairs, get out of a chair off of a couch in a different way. There are lots of different ways that you can take strain off the knee throughout the day if you have a knee issue or if you are afraid for the longevity of your knee joints. So if that is a concern of yours, you should be working on the hip mobility. You should be working on loading your hips with your squats more. You should be working on loading your hips more through those daily movements that we just talked about. And just avoid that knee over top of toe, knee collapsing in kind of movement, because immediately it's going to strain the muscles around the knee a bit more, and it's going to tighten up those tissues, and you're going to see a lot more joint degradation because of that.